Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name's Jack, this is Jthbooks, and it's that time again where I talk to you about books. So today I want to talk to you about books that I simply cannot get out of my head. These are 10 books that I think about all the time. I sit there staring at my shelves and I see them on the shelves and I want to stop whatever crap I'm reading. Oh, I shouldn't say that, I don't read crap books, but I just want to read them. I look at them and I stare at them longingly and lovingly, and because we all just sit around and stare at our shelves, right? Oh, no, just me? Cool. So there could be many different reasons why these 10 books have made this list. It could be because of the characters. I was super invested in the characters or the connections that the characters had. I can think of one on there that I will tell you when it comes up. There are many different reasons why these 10 books have made the list. For me, a book that I can't stop thinking about, it could be for many reasons. It could be because of the story itself. I could have been absolutely captivated by the story and I thought it was just brilliant from start to finish. Or it could be because of the characters and how they've been written, or how the connection between the characters, or if I've felt towards a character, or it could be simply because the writing itself. For me, very much so. I love beautiful writing that, not necessarily flowery writing, but beautiful writing that just cuts me to the core. If you've been on this channel before, you know I love a good cry over books. So many of these books have made me cry, and if they've just been so emotional, they're on there because I think about them and how emotional they made me. So I'll give you a little rundown of each book. I'll say why it's on here, and I hope if you haven't read any of these, you find one that you would like to read, or if you have read some and you agree, or you can disagree. You know, we're an open conversation here in this channel. But let's talk about the books that I cannot get out of my damn head. I will say these books, they're not in any particular order. They're just in a pile. They're just in the pile that I picked them off my shelves off of. So let's start. So first up, we actually have a non-fiction book, and it is In the Dreamhouse by Carmen Maria Machado. This is a memoir that tells of Carmen falling in love with a woman, having a very happy relationship, but then that relationship becomes abusive. And this book is in my head because even like you know, the blurb will tell you that it does turn abusive, but the way she writes about love in the beginning is absolutely magical. I have never been in love. It doesn't look like I'm ever going to be, but I felt it. And I remember reading it, and I was texting my friend who doesn't read, and I said, you have to read this book. I need you to read this book. She didn't, but hopefully you'll listen to me. She didn't. But it just absolutely struck a chord with me, and I can remember that feeling. I can't get it out of my head. I think about this book all the time, which is literally the title of the video, so I don't know why I said that. It plays with form, and it is so beautiful and honest and gut-wrenching. It will absolutely destroy you. And like I said, it plays with form. It's not your traditional memoir. It literally has pages when it says, oh, if you agree with this, go to page 202. If you don't agree, go to page 105. Very much like that. It's really inventive and engrossing. I just think it's brilliant. It's not an easy read by any means. It details some really horrific stuff. But it's just brilliant. I can't get it out of my head. See why it made the list now. Do you see why? Next up, we have Less by Andrew Sean Greer. Now, Less is about Arthur Less, who gets invited to his ex-boyfriend's wedding, and he can't say yes because it would be too awkward, but it would look bad to say no. So he sort of takes these jobs at literary events that take him around the world so he doesn't have to go. Now, this book is on the list for many different reasons. I think it's really beautifully written. It has moments that are really, really funny. It really encapsulates loneliness throughout these pages, I think. But for me, the reason why this has made the list is because of the ending. I don't want to spoil it, but there was a narrative twist at the end that absolutely floored me, absolutely made perfect sense. It gave the character of Arthur Less the ending it deserved, the ending we all sort of want, and the ending it just needed to have. And my mouth fell open, my jaw dropped. It made the world seem right. It filled my heart with joy then, and it still does now. Even think about it. I want to tell you it, but in case you haven't read it, I'm not going to tell you. But it's just, the character feels so sort of bumbling along and lost, and when that happens, it just made the world make sense. And I just adored it. That is why this is on there. I think about that twist all the time. It just, oh, I never read anything like it. I didn't see it coming, and yet the shift made perfect sense. It wasn't jarring or anything. It was just so good. So that is why this beautiful little thing of a book has made the list. Next up, we have The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. Now, this is about Michael, who is a mixed-race teen growing up in London, and he's struggling to find himself, and it's only when he goes to university and starts doing drag that he really finds out who he's supposed to be. Now, this is on the list for me because I was in a month long, friends, reading slump. I didn't want to pick up a book, and this book just absolutely called to me. I thought, maybe this will be the book to get me out of that slump, and it absolutely did that. It is one of the, if not the best YA book I have ever read. It's told in verse. Dean Atta is also a poet, so you can imagine the writing is absolutely beautiful. There are poems in here that I think are phenomenal. But it's special to me because it made me get out of that reading slump. But I think about it all the time because there are lines in this book, I mean, just lines that absolutely made me cry. It just captured Michael so perfectly, and the writing is so lyrical and beautiful that what I think about this book mainly is the fact that it made me cry and the writing. When it's got separate poems, but when a writer is also a poet, the writing is just so special. It flows. Oh, it's just absolutely brilliant. I'm due a reread of this. I'm going to have to do it soon. Maybe I'll do a vlog where I reread some of my favourites from this list. I think that'd be a good idea. Well done for having actually an idea, Jack. But it's a work of art. This is a work of art. Next up, we have The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. Now, this is about Isaiah and Samuel, who are slaves on a plantation in the Deep South, and they live very harrowing lives. The only sort of refuge they have is that they are madly in love with each other. Now, this has made the list because the way this book explores queerness before it really had a name is phenomenal to me. And when you meet other characters in this book for the first time, it is often you meet them through their experience or their opinion of the love that Samuel and Isaiah have. And I really, really enjoy that form. I enjoy that the choice that the author made. And it made me cry. It's so I should have done ones that made me cry, but it is so beautifully written. It is so honest. Like I said, they live harrowing lives. It's a harrowing book. It gets very, very dark and very difficult to read towards the end, but don't let that take away from what a masterpiece this book is. The reason I can't get it out of my head is because I just hadn't read anything like it before. It's so brilliant, and just the way these characters talk about the love before the shame and the unacceptance of the kind of love that Isaiah and Samuel have became what it was. And it's not until sort of the head slave starts preaching to these people that they start to change their opinion. And it's just so clever. It's so heartbreaking. It really broke my heart. And I had such high hopes for this book, and it didn't let me down. So that is why it was sort of the book I'd always wanted to read, and it just didn't disappoint. Next up, we have Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. Now, this is a story of David, who is engaged to a woman, but when she goes away, he is in Paris and he begins an affair with another man. I'm sure you all know what this book is about. It's a bit of a classic. I put this off for a long time because I didn't know if I'd enjoy it, if I didn't know if I was intelligent enough to read it. But it is absolutely brilliant. I feel like such a fool for putting it off for so long. There are so many reasons why this book is one that I cannot get out of my head. It is exquisitely written. What James Baldwin manages to pack into such a short book is incredible. It is incredibly moving. The writing is so descriptive. Sort of David and Giovanni live in this sort of little broken down room, and the descriptions of that room, while you're reading it, you feel like it's in there. I can still remember reading this and feeling like I was in that room. The prose in this book, they are some of the best you'll ever read. They're some of the best I've ever read. Just some of the lines are sort of quite worthy. I mean, love him and let him love you. Do you think anything else under heaven really matters? Flawless. But I mean, this book would be in here for that line alone, for that love him and let him love you. Do you think anything else under heaven really matters? Just alone, that book. But for me, it is the characterization that James Baldwin gets of the character of David. I still think about David a lot. I feel like James Baldwin really gets across his struggle for who he is. He really gets across his desire to live the life that he wants to live, that he was brought up to live, but also his infatuation and his love for Giovanni. And I think he really captures how tense it is between the two people that David wants to be. And that for me is why it's the main reason it's in here, because of that characterization and how he does it in a short book that also has a plot, that also has beautiful descriptions. And it's genius. I'm so annoyed that I waited so long to read it. I hope if you haven't read it, you won't wait as long as me. Next up, we have Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Everaisto. Now, this is the story of Britain as it has never been told. It is the story of 12 different characters, mostly women, mostly black, who make up this country. There are many reasons why this book could be on this list. It is a book that plays with form. There are no full stops. There are no speech marks when characters speak. And some people do struggle with that, but for me, it didn't. I was so sort of captured by the characters and the story that it wasn't an issue for me, but I understand that it is for some people. And I remember I was reading this book and I said to my sister, you need to read this book. I think this book is magic. There is something special about it. And she said she doesn't read because she's a fool. She's not a fool, really. I love her. But she doesn't read like she used to. And she said, I'm certainly not going to start reading again with a book this size. And I thought, that's fair enough. So the main reason why this book stays in my head is because it showed me something I didn't know that I loved in books. This book is 12 different perspectives, and sometimes they don't know each other and sometimes they do, but each story interconnects, it intertwines, and I didn't know that I absolutely loved that. I loved that they were so individual, yet when these characters sort of popped up in each other's stories or connected in some way, it gave the whole novel sort of this circular arc. And I absolutely loved that. This is the first book, I'm sure it's been done before, but this is the first book where I read it, and now I absolutely love it. I actively seek out books like that. So this book sort of changed my reading style and my reading habits and showed me something that I absolutely loved, and that is why it stays in my head. Just the joy and the cleverness of when they would interact, I thought was phenomenal. And changed my reading style. I mean, that's a book and a half. So that is why this one stays in my head. Next up, we have Still Life by Sarah Winman. Now, this is the story of Ulysses Temper and Evelyn Skinner, who meet in 1994 in a Tuscan villa, and they form a connection, and that connection stays with them their whole lives until they can meet again. Now, this is an epic book of sort of grand proportions, and it follows these two characters throughout their lives, and you get Evelyn sort of falling in love for the first time and Ulysses returning to his life after the war and trying to salvage it. But for me, the reason why this stays in my head is the characterization and the connections between the characters. If you love found family, I'm not sure you're going to find it better than this book. The sort of like the second half of the novel, when they all end up in Italy. Well, first, it'll make you want to go to Italy. The descriptions are absolutely gorgeous. You'll feel like I would look up and I'd just sit in my bedroom. I'm like, oh, I'm not in Italy. But it is that sense of found family that is absolutely flawless about this book. Just the connection Sarah creates, they feel so real. And, you know, time has passed, so you know some things are going to happen that you don't want to happen at all. I was so connected to these characters. I felt like I was a part of the found family that they create, and that is why this one has stayed in my head, because when you connect that deeply to the characters and the books and the writing and the situation, it's not going to leave you. And I know so many people feel the same about this one, so if you haven't read it, please pick it up, because it's beautiful. Next up, we have Here Again Now by Okechukwu and Nzelu. Now, this is a story of two British Nigerian men who are very much in love with each other, very much have been friends for many years, but they have never quite been able to express their love. And when a devastating event rips them apart, it's then left with the characters to deal with what happens. Now, there are, again, many reasons why this one stays in my head and I think about it all the time, mainly because it was probably my most anticipated book for 2022. It was the first book I read that year. It was my favourite book of the year, and it absolutely did not disappoint me. I mean, how often does that happen? Now, the main reason this stays in my head, aside from the beautiful prose and the tenderness of this novel, is, like I said, both the characters, they're in love with each other and they've never quite admitted it. And it's just bubbling below the surface. It affects everything they do and every interaction they have with each other. And the way Nzelu shapes it throughout the novel and has created it to penetrate their every moment with each other is phenomenal. I absolutely love it. I think it happens a lot in romance, but in this it feels deeper and more profound. And it's just one of those books that has you screaming because you want them to be together. And like I said, when this event happens, and well, I won't spoil it, but it broke my heart. How brilliant to have a book not disappoint you and probably actually exceed my expectations. I just think this book is a work of art. I absolutely love it. Next up, we have History Is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera. Now, this is the story of Griffin, who has lost his first love in a train accident, and although they weren't together anymore, Griffin's life still sort of begins to spiral and he begins to lose his way, and the person he turns to in his hour of need was Theo's new boyfriend, Griffin. Now, this is the book that stays in my head again for many reasons, mainly because it was the first queer book I ever brought. I remember being in my local Waterstones and really sort of trying to pluck up the courage and trying to be brave, and you know, I was breathing heavy and everything, but they didn't bat an eyelid, and I went home and read it and I absolutely loved it. Now, the main reason this stays in my head, because even though it's a YA book, it deals with some really heavy things, and I think Silvera handles them really delicately and really tenderly, and I think in a less skilled writer, some of what happens wouldn't work. I think a lot of it you'd be like, why is this character doing that? But I get it. And that's why it stays in my head, mainly because even though there are choices I necessarily wouldn't do and I necessarily didn't even agree with, I got it. And I remember thinking, this just wouldn't work for me. Anyone else, any other book, any other writer, it would not work for me. And Adam's skills as a writer that gets across the humanity and the tenderness and the fear just works. It just absolutely works. I mean, this book led me on to, look, I mean, you've seen this whole shelf. This book started all that. And it's still one of my favourites. I think it's a YA book that could be read by adults. I don't think you just think, oh, it's just teenagers. It just feels very deep and very well thought out. And the characters are so strong that it doesn't ever feel silly. So it just has stayed with me for literally years, this book. I can still remember when the event happened and I was so shocked, but I was never put off. I never wanted to put it down. So I think it's a brilliant YA. If you're looking for a place to start for YA, or you want to try a YA book, I think this could be the one. So we started this book with a non-fiction. We're going to finish it with a non-fiction. And we have Wild by Cheryl Strayed. Now, this is the story of Cheryl, who has lost her mother to cancer. After that, her marriage soon crumbled and she really lost her way, and she ends up hiking the PCT for 3 months on her own, and it is the story of that. I remember seeing Cheryl Strayed talk about this book on TV, And I thought, I had to read that. It sounds absolutely brilliant. I read it. I absolutely loved it. I read it on holiday, actually, and then I passed it to my dad. But the reason it has stayed with me, because since reading this, my mum too has died. I haven't been able to pick it up again since she died, but the descriptions of grief really moved me at the time when I read it. But when I think about them now, which I often do, it just sort of floors me, the way she captures grief and how pivotal it feels to lose your mother when she's still young and you're still young. Cheryl lost hers when she was 22. I was 25. It broke my world. I'm 31 now, and I still haven't really got over it at all. Well, I haven't got over it at all. You know, if we carry on talking about it now, I would literally cry now. You don't want to see me cry, do you? But the connection I have with this book because of that now feels so profound. Like I said, it scares me to reread it. I don't think I could, but it's the way she writes about grief and just what it feels like to lose a part of your world and lose your way. I just thought it was brilliant. It even made me want to hike the PCT, and I don't really like walking. But yeah, it's a beautiful memoir that is filled with these lush descriptions and harrowing tales and just grief. It ultimately feels like sort of a healing book for Cheryl and for the reader, but for me, what has happened in my life, I just think it's phenomenal. So there we have it, 10 books that I think about all the time. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you want to read any of these now. Let me know what books you think about all the time. Maybe I'll read them and then I'll think about them all the time. And that's sort of the whole point of this, isn't it? So we can discuss books and chat about our lives. You know I love talking to you in the comments. It's my favourite thing. But I'm going to thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thumbs up as well. They're all very important. It's very important, apparently. Again, I say every time, I have no idea how, but I believe it is. So I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I'm going to speak to you all really, really soon.